Welcome to Sweethearts or Rivals. I'm Charla.
I'm Justin.
What's on our table today?
Guilds of London.
Guilds of London is a game you can play with 2 to 4 players in about 45 to 90 minutes. And they recommend that you can play the game with people who are aged 14 and up.
Right on.
The copy we have is published by Tasty Minstrel Games, and we'd like to give a big thank you to them because this is a review copy.
Nice. Thanks. Alright, so what do you think of the components of Guilds of London?
The components, I think, for the most part, are great quality. Nice wooden meeples.
Yep.
And I think the colors are pretty distinguishable. The cardboard is nice and thick.
Yeah.
The punches are nice and thick as well. The cards, though, I find could have been a little thicker maybe. But there are a lot of cards.
A lot of cards.
So it's understandable why they weren't any thicker.
Yeah.
It's just I find with that many cards to shuffle, it's quite hard when they're a little bit skinnier quality.
Gotcha.
That's the only thing.
Well.
And then the art it's an interesting question because the cards and everything are mainly just icons.
Everything in the game is mainly just icons. Yeah.
So the art is mainly just icons, and the icons are great, quite large. They're quite clear. There's a lot of them to learn.
Yes.
But they're easy to distinguish between each other. So looking them up on this, another component is this great cheat sheet, which is all color coordinated, and the cards are big enough that you can see them pretty clearly. The cheat sheet is done really well, actually.
Except for the numbers on the cards.
Oh, those are really small.
Because the numbers on the cards are small anyway, but the numbers on the pictures of the cards, which are smaller than the cards that are over there, are almost indistinguishable.
Well, for me, they are indistinguishable, even with my glasses on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know there were numbers on the cards.
Yeah. Other than that, cheat sheet's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
But the art basically is just like what's on the cover to get me immersed in the theme.
Yeah.
So I find a disconnect between the art and the theme for me.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I have to say about the art.
The guild signs, when you become a master, are nice.
They're awesome.
But it's just a shield.
Yeah. But they're really done well. I like this one with the swan on it. I like this one with the, whatever you call it, instrument on it.
Lute.
Yeah.
Early guitar.
But I mean, those shields are done really well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The art is good, but I can understand like not being able to put art on there because you need all that iconography to be super clear.
Right.
Because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
So much.
I think it's good. All I'm saying is that there's a disconnect for me to immerse me into the theme.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the strategery, which is a word that we use for strategy, tactics, and luck?
It's very interesting. There's going to be a lot of replayability because the setup is very, very random.
There are a lot of those tiles. There's probably as many tiles in the box over there as there are on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very different. And then even if you're playing with the same tiles, they're still going to be different because all of the second place like scoring is a bunch of random tiles. And there are, again, more of those chits than there are tiles, so there's always some left over, so you don't even play with all of those. Yeah, lots of random setup, which is interesting. If you play a 3 or 4 player game, it's going to be even a little bit more kind of random in the setup because you don't set up the entire board, you add to the board as you play, which is, we've never played it that way, but I imagine it's going to change a little bit of the strategery.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to mention, since we've never played this as more than a 2-player game, like this review is basically just for 2 players. Yeah.
In the 2-player game, there's a lot of strategy because you do start off with one of the guild cards or the mayoral cards right away. So you start off with a strategy. And you start off with 3 of them and you get to choose one. So you can even kind of choose which strategy you want to focus on, which is very cool. Plus, in a 2-player game, you see the entire board. So you can really focus on a long-term strategy. Whereas in the 3 or 4 player game, because of the growth of the board, there are going to be some of the tiles that will come out that you won't know about at the beginning. So it's going to shift it slightly towards tactics. That being said, there's still a ton of tactics in the game because, of course, you don't know what cards you're going to get, and the cards dictate what you can possibly do. You don't want to have just one of the mayoral cards in the game. You want to collect as many of those as possible. So that's going to change your strategies in a tactical way. And there's also this very tactical, like area majority type, like area control game going on. And player order is going to have a huge impact on that. These little neutral negotiation meeples have like massive power over that, which I'm glad we got to showcase just how well you can mess up people over in our playthrough.
Yeah, even yourself when you use them.
So there's a ton of strategy and tactics. Now the randomness during the game is just pretty much going to be the cards. And that's about it. But again, a lot of random variable setup, which is going to make a lot of replayability. Right. Yeah, it's an interesting blend. It's kind of cool. I like it. So, what about the complexity of Guilds of London?
Well, I found it less complex the more I played it.
Yes.
I think it's because there's so many icons that I had to learn that at first they weren't really second nature to me.
Not at all.
No. So the very first game I found really kind of overwhelming, actually, because I had to consult this for almost every single card that I had.
Yes.
Which took away my focus from the actual strategy of the game, I think, just trying to learn the cards. Mm-hmm. But the nice thing about the icons is they are clear and very distinguishable.
Yeah.
So once you've learned quite a few of them, then the flow of the game changes more and you can enjoy the strategy of the game more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one or two playthroughs I found disappointing because of that. Because you couldn't focus on the game, you just had to be constantly checking the icons.
Right.
So there is a significant investment of time just to learn the iconography.
Unless you have a photographic memory.
Yes.
That would be different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which we don't.
And then I found it interesting. I kept thinking that I had to like spread over the board, but you can just go to anyone. So once I got that concept out of my head, then it made the game very interesting.
Nice.
But for some reason I thought you start at the guild hall and then you walk over here and then you walk over here. No, it's not like that at all. It's just who has the most influence in each spot.
Yeah. Nice.
But for an area majority game, for 2 players, I find it works quite well. Because sometimes the area majority for 2 players doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
But it's nice that you get that second place prize. And sometimes it's just as good as the first place prize.
Sometimes it's better.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what makes the area majority work for a 2-player game.
Yeah. That, and you need so many meeples of any color in a section for it to resolve. And they don't resolve every round for a 2-player game, which is nice. Yeah. So you get a little bit of time to work on it, but it's not, the numbers aren't huge. There's a couple of tiles that the numbers, like this one over here, tile number 1 needs 7, which is a lot, but most of them are 3 and 4, and there's a couple that are only 2.
Right.
So it's easy to sneak in on those, which is nice.
It is nice. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of the game is manipulating all the meeples around to try to get the majority, or maybe you really just want second place.
Yeah. And
learning those little strategies, it's a little complicated at first, but once you've played a couple of games, I think you'll catch on pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving all the meeples around into all the different guilds, kind of sneaking your way into first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite fun. What do you think about the playability?
Playability. We've already talked about the investment of time to learn the iconography, so that is going to be a barrier for people who don't want to do that. Again, the first couple of games were kind of disappointing, so you have to get past those, and then you start to figure out the flow of the game, and that's when it starts to become very interesting. Some of the things that make it very interesting are, like we talked about, like you just talked about, being able to sneak your meeples in, snag some of those. And some of the things that this game does that lets you sneak your way into that area majority quite well for a 2-player game are, on your turn you can choose not to play any cards at all, get more cards, and then on your turn, you can play as many of your cards as you want. So it's actually worth it for you to hold back, not reveal your plans, build up a big mitt full of cards, and then in the round that everything's going to resolve, just suddenly take over. Especially if you're second player.
That's what I was just going to say. Sometimes you don't want to be the first person on the track because the player order is determined by your score.
Yeah.
So the first player in first place is the first player.
Yeah.
So you kind of maybe do want to be like the last player. Because then you can wiggle yourself into all kinds of things like right before all these tiles are going to resolve.
Yeah. So I'm like first player, you're second player. It's the last round before stuff resolves. I play all my cards. I'm done. There's nothing else I can do. And you're like, I know exactly what you're going for. I know exactly what your plans are. And you have nothing to do after I get to do all my cards. And bam, bam, bam. And you just get to manipulate everything.
It's kind of more fun to be the last player.
Yeah. And lots of tricky ways you can do that. And then once you add these negotiation meeples, like I knew the very last round of the playthrough, I was at your total mercy because you had all of them.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do. And I think you were last player. So that last round was just a total wash for me.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. Not that I'm saying I lost or won, just that last round was just like, there's nothing I can do. This is Charla's game. So it's very interesting in that way and works. And I can see the chaos of all of that increasing significantly once you start adding more players.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. The game length, it's actually a very quick game because you play all your cards or you don't play any cards and you just pick them up. But the first several games are going to be significantly longer because, again, you're constantly referring to your player aid just to learn the iconography.
Unless you give these out ahead of time.
True.
But for me, I wouldn't be able to learn all these icons without playing the game.
Yeah.
Because I won't learn them unless I've actually used them.
Yeah. Then you understand how they actually work.
Right.
But yeah, once you understand the iconography, it's pick up your cards, look at them, and it just intuitively you understand what you can do, and you don't have to refer to the player aid very often at all.
Quite as much.
Yeah, which is nice. And we've already talked about the replayability, where there are a lot of tiles and a lot of these second player markers and a lot of cards and a lot of end game scoring cards. So that is going to make for a lot of replayability.
Right. Although we generally do go through the full deck when we play the game.
Yes, we do.
With just 2 players. So with more players, you're probably going to see the cards more often.
That's true.
Or it depends on how they get shuffled. But
yeah. There's actually at the very top of the card, there's the very small icon that shows the card number. There's also dots above it. And that's how many of that card there are. So this is card number 40, and there's 1 dot, which means there's only 1 of these in the whole deck. That's interesting, kind of like as almost like an advanced strategy of looking at your cards and knowing, do I want to waste this hiring or moving someone because it's the only one in the deck?
Right.
Yeah. So that's also some interesting decisions. As for the theme and the play, even though the lack of a lot of artwork kind of has a disconnect between the theme, it does make sense that you are hiring these people, sending them out to take over the guilds. There is a thematic gameplay to that.
There is, but do you feel like a guild master when you're playing it?
Not particularly.
I don't either.
Yeah. So there's some theme to it, but there's still that disconnect between the gameplay.
And I mean, I'm a huge champion. I can find theme where there's no theme to be found. And for me to say I do not feel like a guild master when I play this game.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So does Guilds in London have the awesomeness or the cuteness?
Well, let me look at these people.
It is your favorite artist.
It is my favorite artist, yes. But this game is more awesome than cute.
Yes. I think the awesomeness, even though the art is nice, it's just iconography.
Right.
So there's not a lot of awesomeness there. I think the awesomeness is once you get past that barrier of the iconography, there are lots and lots and lots of ways to manipulate things into your favor.
Right. And that's not cute. It's only awesome.
Right. It's also kind of awesome that if you have played several games and you're playing with someone who hasn't, they're not going to find the game awesome.
Maybe not.
Because you will probably clean their clocks.
Well, you could be nice and help them.
Yes, you should.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely like a skill barrier to the game as well.
There was for me.
Yeah.
We're not saying that there's for everyone, but for us.
But you do feel that awesomeness of, I can't believe I just pulled that off. Because you can do some crazy awesome combos and do cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which will get better as you learn the game. Are we going to trade it or keep it?
Well, just considering that we play most of our games as 2-player.
Yeah.
I think, and even though I enjoyed it more every time I played it, like the last game that we just played, I probably enjoyed that the most of all the games that I've played.
Yeah.
But I just don't see us playing it a lot. So it's probably a trader.
Yeah. Once we got past that barrier, the game became very enjoyable. But I think a bit of it is the disconnect. Like, I don't feel like a guild master. There's no narrative of what's happening that I picture in my head. And that's an important component to our games.
For us, it is.
Yeah.
Quite a bit, yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. Definitely a trader. Right on. And did we finish this as Sweethearts or Rivals? We finished it as
Sweethearts.
Rivals. Really? Sweethearts? What?
I don't feel much rivalry. I mean, it's cool when I pull off a cool move.
Yeah.
But I just feel like, I kind of just feel like I'm number crunching.
Okay.
And then in the end, it's like, yep, well, he's so far in the lead. Or, I can't believe I won that game this time. Huh.
I think
I just can't believe it.
that should we get into the game and use these guys a whole lot, these can be evil.
They can be.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just don't have a lot of them in the game.
It's
and
true.
You don't have the opportunity to use them.
It is true. But you can use them to really mess over an opponent. Like, oh, look at that. You're going to get second place. Well, you're just going to get no place at all anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I used all 4 of them in the last round, spoilers,
Yeah.
that made you have rivalry.
Yeah. That was a bummer.
I
Especially
was just like, this calculates well in my head. I'm going to do it.
especially considering I was in the lead for like the vast majority of the game.
Yeah.
And then, spoilers, lost by quite a few points. Yeah. And there were several moves where I was like, okay, I can do this, and it will be give points for my end game scoring, and then I can do... Oh, no, you just took it over. You just took it over. Being first place in this game is not good.
Sometimes.
Except at the very end.
Right.
Yeah. The rest of it is not that good. Anyway. Rivals. Alright, and that is Guilds of London.
It is. Thanks for watching.
Thanks a lot.
We'll see you in the next video.
Laters. I don't really know what to say about that. Yes. Let's move on.